So let me start with this. It's so easy for me to put down the number one conference. Why is that? Well, because there's just a few criteria that I focus on when it comes to best conference. So here are some of those criteria. Really, three criteria. How good and deep is your top end? That's number one. So your best teams, how good are they? And how many of them are there? That's number one. Number two then is how competitive and how deep is the middle of your conference. I actually don't really care about how bad your worst team is. I just kind of throw that out. And so I'm more focused on as that second line is like how competitive and how deep is the middle of your conference. And then the last thing I look at is, and I know this is where, people are going to get upset with me over this one, but I look at the major brands within your conference and are they doing their job? Are they carrying the flag for your conference throughout the country? And it's interesting because this year we've got some of that, a lot of that actually. And that's why it was really easy for me to land on my top three conferences in the country right now. Let me start. My number one conference in college football is, listen, this is no surprise, it's the SEC. We all know that the SEC is the best conference. I know it, and I've admitted it I don't know how many times all over the place. I get labeled as being this SEC hater because I will give other teams their due, because I don't totally buy in all the time, head over heels for the SEC narrative. I don't buy in when Kirby Smart tells me that it's so tough to win at Missouri. It's not tough to win at Missouri. Your team just played like garbage. All right. And that's the way I felt. That's what I said. And then everyone's like, you hate the SEC. I don't hate the SEC. They're the best conference in the land. I obviously know that. And it's obviously true. They're not only producing the best teams in college football year over year with all their national championships, 5 of the 8 college football playoff national champions, but they're also producing the best players. Last year, 65 players from the SEC were drafted in the NFL, 12 of them in the first round. I mean, it's obvious, and I say this every single year, but all the fans of the SEC teams are like, Klatt hates the SEC. That's untrue. The only thing I hate is the ridiculous narrative. By the way, you're really strong as a conference. You don't need the narrative, right? Just like let the truth set you free. Let the games on the field set you free. 12 national titles since 2006, but even more than that, because this is not a historical reference. I am also still trying to do this in a snapshot for 2022, this season. What's the best conference this year? Well, it's not just historical for the SEC. They also, I think, have the best teams at the top. And they're the deepest in terms of top end and top tier teams in the country. So looking at you, Alabama and Georgia, certainly doing your part. Those two programs, as of right now, and maybe you can include Ohio State and include Clemson, but certainly Alabama and Georgia. After playing for the national title a year ago, after doing what they do in recruiting year after year, fielding the teams that they have fielded and the wins that they've got even this year over Oregon or at Texas, like they are the preeminent brands in college football. As long as Nick Saban is at Alabama, they are the preeminent brand in college football. Kirby Smart has done an amazing job. So at the top end, they're better than everybody else. And they've also got some teams that are backing them up on that tier right behind the top end. So Tennessee and the way that they've played, in particular with Hendon Hooker at quarterback, that's obviously a feather in their cap. And then a couple of teams that I don't know if we expected this, but have certainly played well to this point. Mississippi State comes to mind. Ole Miss comes to mind. There is not a quieter top 10 team than Ole Miss. Maybe actually, you know what? Strike that. Oklahoma State and Ole Miss. Two of the quietest. Nobody's looking at them. No one's seen anything. It's just kind of like, oh, yeah, they're in the top 10. They're undefeated. And good for them. We'll see if they stay there. But the SEC, their strength at the top is something that I've always admired and always pointed to and said this is the reason why they are the best conference. They're also pretty good in the middle of the conference. Now, you can make an argument that maybe other conferences are better in the middle, but that becomes apples and oranges, and certainly you're not going to get an SEC fan to see it that way. But the Big 12, the Big 10, like there's some conferences that in the middle of the conference, there's some serious competitive balance, and we're seeing that play out. And then the last thing is like, what are your major brands doing, right? That's the third criteria I told you about. And there's certainly in a driver's seat mode with their two biggest brands, at least in football, carrying the torch for their conference. Alabama's been doing it since Nick Saban got there. Kirby Smart and that Georgia team are certainly do it. So they check every box, and it's not really, all that close, although the Big Ten is very good, and they're going to be my number 2 conference. But the SEC is the best conference this year, and those are the reasons why. Did you guys all get that, SEC fans? Hey, Ryan Russillo, you constantly love to, on your podcast, say that I hate the SEC. Is this better? Is this better? Like, I will acknowledge truth, and so that's the truth. And it also can be true that the narrative is stupid, right? Like, I don't need Kirby Smart to tell me that it's tough to win in Missouri. That's stupid. That's stupid, and you all know it.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.